environment and what are the different components of the environment. Then we have seen about the importance of this particular studies, then the objectives. Then we have seen about the role you have to play as an environmental engineer for the betterment of the society, how you can give technical solutions to the different environment related problems. We have seen about the ecosystem, the definition of the ecosystem, types and structure of the ecosystem, and we have seen about the types in the form of a flow chart, the different types of the ecosystems and the different subcomponents that are there in the ecosystem. We have seen in the last classes, and then we have seen about the structure of the ecosystem, which is having the abiotic components and the biotic components. Now then we have seen about the relationship that exists in the ecosystem and what is the role sun is going to play, what is the role atmosphere is going to play, what is the role the soil is going to play, and how the plants, herbivores and detrivores are going to function together in the presence of these physical components, and that dynamic relationship that exists in the environment is being understood by you in the last class. And we have seen short definitions of these components, the abiotic components and the biotic components. And then we have seen in details about the biotic components. We have seen about the first biotic component, which is producers, which are plants. What is the speciality of the plants we have understood, what is the purpose the plants are going to serve with reference to this ecosystem we have understood. So we have seen all those, and then we have understood about a very broad classification of a category of biotic components called as consumers, right? So consumers, which are of 4 different categories, we have seen. Then what are the decomposers and what is the role that the decomposers play, we have understood in the last class, which are called as saprotrophs. So you do remember such words, such technical terms. The other name of decomposers, they are also called as reducers, and the other scientific term for the decomposers or reducers is a term called as saprotrophs. Sapros means rotten, trophos means feeder. So something that feeds upon the dead and the decayed matter, food material, is called as a saprotroph. So we have seen what is that role that the decomposers play. We have understood that. Then we have seen in the last lecture number 3, we have understood about something called as energy flow that happens in the ecosystem. So please do understand this concept very carefully. So energy flow in the ecosystem is where the energy moves in the different components that are present in the ecosystem, because movement of the energy is what keeps or differentiates. Please do understand, the movement of the energy is what differentiates the abiotic components and the biotic components. So not that soil doesn't have energy or rock doesn't have energy. They have energy inherently by virtue of the composition that they possesses. Even water has energy by itself, but there is no flow of the energy happening within those abiotic components. The only place where you can see flow of energy happening is the biotic components. That's why biotic components are living, because they are having the specialized process of flow of the energy. So the energy is not static in living things. The energy is highly dynamic in the living things, and that flow of energy in the ecosystem I tried to explain in the last class in the form of explaining you something called as trophic levels. So 4 different trophic levels I have shown in the picture, but there is a 5th trophic level also. You can just imagine one more bar on the top. So the trophic levels are represented in this fashion. You can see always the first trophic level will be at the bottommost, and as it goes on, the trophic level is going to increase. But what is very important is the size of these trophic levels. So the bottommost trophic level will be the biggest, and as it goes, the trophic level size has to decrease. That is the basic fact here, that is the basic important requirement. So that's very important, that the first trophic level should be bigger and the last trophic level should be smaller. So what is occupying in the different trophic levels? We have seen that the producers will always be in the bottommost, which is the first trophic level. Then the primary consumers, which are herbivores, will be in the second trophic level. Then secondary consumers, which the small carnivores, they will be there in the third trophic level, and as it goes, you can see the tertiary consumers will be there in the trophic level, and the quaternary consumers will be there in the fifth trophic level. So producers will always be at the first trophic level, is the basic fact that we all have to accept and understand. So energy flow we have seen, and how the process is an exothermic process. So one simple question I might be asking you, is the energy flow in an ecosystem exothermic or an endothermic process? So you have to answer it as exothermic process. So this we have seen, and then we have seen the different diagrams which shows how a chain looks like, how a food web looks like, and how a pyramid looks like. So we have seen how a food chain looks like. So food chain, food web, and food pyramid. The only difference is the way of representing them, and why is it called as a chain, why is it called as a web, and why is it called as a pyramid. We have seen in the last time we have seen a food chain, we have seen detritus food chain, and we have seen a food web. I told why is it called as a food web, aquatic food web, and food web in forest, and grassland food web, and energy flow in the ecosystem. Once again, where the heat is getting liberated, we have seen, and how the solar energy plays a very important role in initiating the processes, and that solar energy being absorbed by plants, and plants being consumed by primary consumers, from there to secondary consumers, from there to tertiary, and you can imagine quaternary on top of that. So at every trophic level, you can see heat is getting liberated. That's the reason it is called as a exothermic process. So the flow of the energy that happens in the living biotic components of the ecosystem is a purely exothermic process. So I think this is the last slide I have shown in the last class. So in lecture 3, so where I have summarized about the different types of representations, the food chain, and then the food webs and energy pyramids. So let us try to continue and understand the next very important concepts after understanding I hope all of you have understood these three basic things, and the different trophic levels, and which are all there in each trophic level. Very important for you to know with reference to this concept as far as multiple choice questions are concerned. So today's class, and most probably the last class of module 1, I'm going to try to finish off this in 1 hour or so, is a concept called as biodiversity. Now, what does biodiversity mean? Now, as the name, it's a self-explanatory word. You can say diversity means variety. Diversity means variety. Bio means life, right? Obviously, biodiversity now you would have understood that it means the different types of living things that exist, right? And the variety of forms in which the life can exist is what is termed as biodiversity. Why we are trying to understand this so specifically? Because I'm going to connect to the environmental engineering concepts here at the end. Slowly follow it carefully. Why we are understanding the concepts of biodiversity. According to IUCN, International Union for Conservation of the Nature, right? It's an organization which tells about the statistics of the different living things. Can be plants, can be animals, can be human species, or can be even microorganisms like bacteria, fungi, viruses, parasites, right? Protozoans, um, prokaryotes, eukaryotes, are different categories of the living things are taken into consideration, and they give statistics. IUCN gives statistics, right? Their statistics very clearly say that as of now, there are approximately 5 to 10 million species of plants and animals. Friends, I don't know how many of you are following the number. It's a huge number. And it is not in one country, it's throughout the world. Global statistics, these are globally 5 to 10 million species of plants and animals are there. And they say, all of you have heard about the word called as evolution, right? So evolution is not something that is of your age or your grandfather's age. We can't say from when this life had been existing, right? So many species were there which were earlier there and which got extinct, right? They are no more there, and the evolution had been a continuous process which had been happening for a long time, right? Millions and millions and millions of years have passed. So they say, IUCN statistics very clearly say that the present 5 to 10 million species that you see existing on the planet Earth is because of 3 billion years of evolution. They say 3 billion years of evolution has happened, and so many millions of species have gone, and so many species have got extinct. So many species we don't know, right? That exist also, right? Still it is unexplored, right? And out of this 3 billion years of evolution that has happened, the present number of living things that is there in the biosphere is accounted to be somewhere around, you can see the range, it's a huge range. They say somewhere from 5 to 10 million species might be there, and it is an inclusion of both plants and animals. Right, friends, I don't know if you are following the numbers very carefully. It's a huge number, right? 5 to 10 million species of plants and animals is a huge number. How many species of plants and animals you and I have seen in our life? Negligible, right? We might have seen somewhere around 100 varieties of plants or trees in our life, right? From our childhood up till now. In my case, I would have seen around 100 or 150 varieties of plants or trees. That too, because I am a biotechnologist. I have seen good number of trees and plants for my work. That is the reason I've seen. But a normal man, how many or the person belonging to some other domain, I can't expect them seeing more than 100 or 150 trees in their life, right? I'm not telling the number of trees, 100 varieties of trees, right? 100 varieties of trees. So same way, how many varieties of animals you have seen, like counting dog or cat or cow or ox or buffalo, or if you keep going, the maximum number of animal species that you would have seen, or even I would have seen, might be around 50, right? No, not even that 50 also reaches if you go to a zoological park. Otherwise we can't get to see many animals at all, right? So the maximum number of species that you would have seen is 50, or might be maximum 100 if you have gone for ocean expedition or deep ocean swimming. If you would have gone, keeping including the types of fishes that you see there, the maximum number of species that you will reach is 100. So we are just in the numbers of 50s and hundreds. You can see 100 varieties of plants you have seen, and 100 varieties of animals you would have seen. But you see the actual number that exists, right? 5 to 10 million species. 5 to 10 million species, friends. It's a huge difference, because unexplored wealth of these plants and animals is huge. We really don't know how many exists. That's what you see in Amazon, or any of this Discovery Channel, or any of these things. If you see the number of varieties of fishes that you can see, the number of varieties of snakes that you can see, the number of varieties of plants and the trees and the different types of, so many varieties of animal species and plant species are there, which we don't know, we have not seen. But that is evolution. That is a result of 3 billion years of evolution, right? So this variety of this plants and animals is what is called as biodiversity. And why we are trying to understand this biodiversity is for a simple fact. Before I show subsequently, I will tell the fact first. The simple fact is we have to conserve biodiversity at any cost, right? We have to conserve biodiversity at any cost. We cannot upgrade one species and we cannot downgrade the other species, right? You are understanding? Doesn't human beings are also one of the species of this 5 to 10 million species, the plant and animal species. But one cannot be a leader for the rest of the millions of species, right? So this is what is to be understood not by any other species but by human beings, because I already told you the only intellectual, living, component that you can see in the biosphere is a human mind, right? We have the thought process, we can think and we can do things, and that thought process itself has created a lot of problems, and that has of course given a lot of solutions as well. But it is time now that our mind has to start thinking for solutions rather than creating problems, right? So our science or our technology should not be pinching the society further in creating problems. It should start giving solutions to the problems. So this biodiversity, this 5 to 10 whatever number of millions of species that we have seen here, this 5 to 10 millions of species of the plants and animals have come into existence because of 3 major processes. So I'm not going to explain them because it's all deep biology. I'm not going to trouble you by explaining, but I really want you to know these names, right? By the way, they are not Greek and Latin, very simple terms only. Very briefly, I will try to explain you the 3 processes. The first reason for such a huge variety of species that is being existing is genetic diversity. Genetic diversity. So genes, diversity in the genes is called as genetic diversity. Diversity in the species is called as species diversity. Diversity in the ecosystem is called as ecosystem diversity. These 3 diversities together are responsible for a bigger term called as biodiversity. Now, what is genetic diversity? Very simple examples I will give you. What is genetic diversity? See, for examples, Americans and Indians and Africans and Chinese and Japanese, right? What is the difference here? They are all human beings. All of us are human beings, right? But are we same? Are we the same? No, we are not the same. We look different. Our heights are different. Our colors are different, right? So there are a lot of difference. Why up to Americans and Chinese, and why intracontinental? I will tell between a brother and a sister, or a brother and a brother, or a sister and a sister. They will not look the same until and unless we are twins, right? There is a huge difference between the children from the same mother, right? How can we expect similarity between people from 2 different regions and 2 different countries? So there will be a lot of diversity in the pool of the genes, and that diversity in the pool of the genes, is what is called as genetic diversity. Then species diversity. Species diversity. I'm going to show some simple pictures for you to understand the species diversity. Within the same species, there can be within the same variety of the species, there can still be diversity. For example, mangoes, varieties of mangoes. You have badam mango, you have Alfonso mango, you have Banginpalli mango. You have so many varieties of the same mango. That is also diversity, right? Same is the case with bananas and so on and so forth. You can go for many examples here. So this is the reason for another set of diversities. So the next one, you can see ecosystem. diversity. Ecosystem diversity means what? Something that we have already seen in the previous picture. Ecosystem is also not of one kind. We have lentic ecosystem, we have lotic ecosystem, we have wetland ecosystem, right? We have ocean ecosystem, we have an ecosystem separately for forest, separately for grassland, separately for desert, right? So the different varieties of the ecosystems is also a reason for diversity. So changes in the genes, changes in the species, changes in the ecosystem together constitute for diversity that you can see, which is responsible for millions and millions of species that is being seen for so many billions of years of evolution, is what is called as biodiversity. So these are simple pictures that you can follow. You can see this is how a genetic diversity looks like. You can see bananas. So many varieties of bananas are there, right? This can be considered as a species diversity also, and of course it can be considered as genetic diversity as well. You can see Yalaki Balehanu, you can see robust banana, you can see Kerala type of banana. So many varieties of bananas are there. These are all because of the types of the genes and the diversity of the genes. You can see the different types of dogs here, different species of the dog. It's the same family called as dog, but there are many subspecies of the dogs. This is one example. Don't think that it is a final example. This is one of the example. Many such examples are there. Now, this is how ecological diversity look like. So it can be ecosystem ecology that is present in water, ecology that is present in land, ecology of forest, ecology of deep water, ocean, different types of ecosystems, and these are the three different varieties of diversities which are responsible for something called as biodiversity. So multiple choice question paper, I'm going to ask which of these are the reasons for biodiversity. A, genetic diversity. B, species diversity. C, ecological diversity. D, all of the above, right? Or I can make some combinations of this question by putting some new diversity variety here. So you need to be able to answer such trickish, not very tough, but such questions also you might have to answer. So I'm going to straight away go into Indian scenario, because unless and until we come to Indian scenario, the purpose of this paper won't be served, because as engineers, having this nationality of this great country, you need to first of all know the biodiversity of our country, and later you will be understanding what is that you have to do for protection of this biodiversity, right? So Indian scenario, uh, first of all, let us see some good facts about India. India is one of the most diverse nations in the world, right? The best and the most diverse nations in the world, and it ranks, you can see, it ranks ninth in terms of plant species richness, especially plants, and it ranks in ninth position. So you might ask a question, sir, right, ninth is not a great number or a great rank, but one fact that you need to know is this ninth rank that our country occupies is not after any domesticated countries like India. What I mean to say, the first 1 to 8th rank, whatever are there, are understood to be deep forests, not civilized societies, right? You are understanding, which means first rank if it goes to Amazon, deep forests, second rank if it goes to Alabama, or third rank, or different types of deep forests, right? You can imagine in the top 5 to 6 positions, right? Not like America, Japan, and all are not in the top 1 to 8 positions. Deep forests are there in 1 to 6 to 7 positions, right? Africa comes in the 8th position. After Africa, India comes in the 9th position. After India, many places after India, you can see the so-called developed countries like America or some other countries, right? This might be really shocking for you to know, but this is a fact. The plant richness in India is the best, because the top 8 or 7 or 8 positions is not normal countries, they are all deep forests. So the civilized means where human beings exist and where coexistence of many living things happen is called as civilized. But in a deep forest you won't see that coexistence. No, you don't see humans at all in deep forests, right? Even if they are there, very few, they are called as tribes, right? But ours is a civilized society. So the place where coexistence of human beings, animals, and plants happen is called as a civilized society, and that civilized society where you can see maximum richness of the plant is the speciality of India, and no wonder Ayurveda is born here, right? Ayurveda is our inherent property. But unfortunately it has gone to some others hands now. China seems to be doing really good in Ayurveda. They have called it as Chinese medication system, right? Japan is doing a good job with reference to herbal medicines. Even America, Australia, they are all doing, they are all going towards Ayurvedic medicines now, but we are all going towards allopathic medications, right? So that's a, that's a unfortunate thing, but Ayurveda is born here, all of you know that. So our plant richness is great, but what is the problem with India? We will try to understand very quickly. So here I am going to introduce you to one concept called as hotspot, right? So that you will understand what is the problem with India very clearly. First of all, let me first define a hotspot, right? Later I will be explaining what this hotspot is. Now, all of you listen carefully. I don't know, next slide, I think. Yeah. What is a hotspot? We will try to understand. We will try to define. Then I'll come back to this slide. So hotspot is nothing but a biogeographical region. So it's a biogeographical region, means geographically separated region where life is there. That's why biogeographical region. So biodiversity hotspot is a biogeographic region with significant levels of biodiversity that is threatened by human habitation. That is threatened by human habitation. So what actually this means is, you see the sentence 2, you will understand very clearly. The term biodiversity refers to the biologically rich area. Forget about this number. I am first trying to define what a hotspot so that you will understand. Listen to me carefully. Imagine a biologically rich region. Any biologically rich region means a region like India, where you can see plants, animals, human beings, so many varieties of plants, so many varieties of animals. It's a biologically rich region, imagine. So if such a biologically rich region, any such biologically rich region in the world, right, if it gets affected by 70% and above because of human activity, such a region is called as a hotspot. Listen to my sentence carefully once again. Any biologically rich region which gets affected 70%, at least 70%, and above, of course, at least 70% because of human activity, not because of any other reason, because of human activity, such a region is termed as hotspot. And friends, Throughout the world, 35 hotspots are being identified. 35 hotspots are being identified. Out of these 35 hotspots that are being identified, 2 hotspots are found from India. Follow my sentence carefully. 35 different such hotspots are being identified throughout the world. What are hotspots? Once again, biologically rich region which is affected at least 75% because of human habitation or human activity. They are called as hotspots. 35 such hotspots are there worldwide. Out of that 35 hotspots, 2 hotspots are there identified in India. And this is a threat that WHO has raised. IUCN and WHO has raised these as a threat for the 35 different regions throughout the world. And India is also under a red alarm condition because the 2 hotspots are found in India. And friends, what is unfortunate thing is the 2 hotspots that are there identified in India are so big. The 2 hotspots are so big that they almost cover the entire India. Even if the number is 2, the 2 hotspots are so big that they are almost covering the entire India. Right? What are those hotspots? We will try to understand. Now you go to this slide. Indian scenario we are explaining. So, 2 of the world's, sorry for the number, 35 you can mention there. Actually, 25 is because of clubbing of few of the things, but in India it is 2. That is a fixed number. 2 of the world's 35 biodiversity hotspots are found in India. And India is origin of important crop species such as pigeon pea, eggplant, cucumber, cotton, sesame. All of you know these plants, right? It is authenticated crops of India. You don't find pigeon pea or eggplant or cucumber anywhere in the world except in India, right? And India is also a center of various domesticated species such as millets, cereals, legumes, vegetables, medicinal and aromatic crops. These are all our property, right? And this is about plants. Not just plants, even animals. India is very, very rich. That is called as fauna. I hope all of you know the terms flora and fauna. Flora stands for plants. Fauna stands for animal. And even our faunal wealth is very, very good because we have approximately 91,000 animal species that are there in India. Might not be a huge number, but 91,000 animal species is great, right? So that's a of course South Africa and all you can see much more varieties of animal species, but with reference to India we have around approximately 91,000 species of animals that we can find here. So this is about India. The concern majorly is the 2 different hotspots which I am going to explain. I have already defined in this slide, I have already defined the hotspot. What is a hotspot? And you can see hotspot label was developed by ecologists in 1980s, late 1980s. Actual year is 1988. That's why, and friends, 1988 is not long ago. Hotspot was being identified in 1988. It's a very, very recent discovery, we should say. So because the threat started happening only after 1980s, right? 1988. From 1988, if you see the number of natural calamities that India has suffered and the number of problems that the whole of the world is facing, a number of raising problems that the whole of the world is facing, which even includes the current COVID-19 condition, is all because of being this many 35 different hotspots being identified throughout the world. And whichever is a hotspot, wherever that hotspot is being identified, ecologists very clearly say that that particular region is under threat for so many problems. So this is 1980s development, not a long back, and they have labeled and these are how the hotspots look like. You can see these are all the different hotspots. I'm zooming it. I hope you can see. These are all the different hotspots. I'm not going to ask any of these names because we are going to concentrate only with reference to India. You can see the Sundalands, Indo-Burma. You can see all of these. This is where India is. You can see here. We are going to come to India. In the next slide, you can see here Indo-Burma. Whole of the region is red. The thickness of the red color indicates the intensity of that hotspot. More you can see this scale, right? Intensity of the scale. So 35 different hotspots are being identified, and you can see this when it is being developed, February 2005. Right, current one is also there. Actually, unfortunately, if you see the current one, I'm trying to get a hold of it. I will try to show it in the next subsequent classes. This redness has increased with reference to India. In 2019 they have released. This redness is completely increased so much that it is almost occupying the entire country now. That is the biggest concern. So this is how hotspots, these are all, if you count them, they are all 35 in number. So what are the two different hotspots of India? Two different hotspots of India are actually sub-classified into four different hotspots. And the four different hotspots that are initially identified and later subsequently clubbed and called as two hotspots. First I will show the four hotspots, and after that I will show the I will show the what are the clubbed ones and what are the two hotspots right now. So the four hotspots earlier were Himalaya, Indo-Burma, Sund Islands, and Westernghat and Sri Lanka. So what they have done later, they have clubbed Himalaya and Indo-Burma, and they have clubbed Sund Islands and Western Ghats, and they named this as one hotspot of India and this as the other hotspot of India. So you can see what are all there under Himalayan belt and what are all there under what is this? What are there under Indo-Burma, what are there under Sundaland, and what are there under Western Ghats. Not to really worry about the names of these countries and all, but what is important for us to know is the two major hotspots with reference to India. So I already told you this is some time back, this picture, but the current picture, if you see, this hotspot has almost come up to this portion, I should say. And this hotspot has almost come up to this particular portion. So whole of the of our country is under threat now. And what are those two hotspots that you are seeing here? One is Himalaya, that is Eastern Himalaya. Please do remember Eastern, because Western Himalaya and all, if it is given, the answer is wrong. It is Eastern Himalayas and Western Ghats. Eastern Himalayas and Western Ghats. So major threats of this enormous biodiversity is you can see logging of the forests, conversion of forest to agricultural lands and other plantations, and this amounts to several habitat destructions. And now above all, these vulnerable regions are further threatened by a number of developmental activities such as roads, railways and dams. Right? We are going to see these developmental activities and how the Eastern Himalayas and Western Ghats are suffering. This entire concept we are going to understand in the next module, right? Next subsequent modules. But for now, first know that these are the hotspots. So this is Himalayas, Eastern Himalayas, and this is Western Ghats. Eastern Himalayas, you can see how big Eastern Himalayas is. How big. And this you can see completely. So from here, this is going to impact up to this. From here, this is going to laterally impact like this. This is going to impact like this, and this is going to impact like this. right? Whole of the India is suffering, is going to suffer subsequently much more. You can see how worst Sri Lanka is. Environmentalists very clearly are telling that you might not be able to see a country called Sri Lanka in few years down the lane, because it might be underwater, they say. Yeah, it is a fact. They say Sri Lanka is completely going to drown because of the because the whole of the country completely is identified as a hotspot. So there are a lot of threats that is there right now, and environmentalists are really worried. Global warming phenomenon is going on, and lot of environment related concerns are there throughout the world. And with reference to our country is not so huge with reference to many other countries, but we are very huge with reference to our population, unfortunately, right? We are going to see how these are all affecting our country, and you will be understanding by yourself voluntarily. You will be understanding by yourself, and you will be accepting the fact behind it being this subject being introduced for engineers like you, because you are going to play a very important role in avoiding many of these problems, because the problem now needs technical solutions. Is there anything that you can do for our country in using your engineering knowledge is the concern right now, and this is the most important thing that you need to know. These are the two different hotspots. So let us discuss in a very little about each of these hotspot, because if you discuss lots is there to discuss, but we don't have that much necessity right now in this particular module. So Himalayas, I'm just going to read out. Himalayas stretch over an arc over 3,000 kilometers across countries like Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, northwestern and northeastern states of India, and covers, you can see this, 7,50,000 kilometers square of area. This is the range of Himalayan stretch, right? And the hotspot includes the world's largest peak, like you can see Mount Everest is there in that Himalayas, that stretch, and a few of the deepest river gorges. Both the eastern as well as the western Himalayas are home to diverse ecosystems and thousands of different life forms. But western Himalayas is not a big problem. What is a concern here is eastern Himalayas. So the concern more is towards eastern Himalayas. So little bit about Western Ghats. Western Ghats is which covers our states, right? Western Ghat is a 1,600 kilometers long mountain range running through the west coast of India and covering the states of Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Goa, Maharashtra, and Gujarat. So these are the these are the states which are in the border, right? Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Goa. You can see this border. I'm speaking about this border, right? And this size has increased, of course. It has almost spread into Andhra now. So the redness. So these mountains cover approximately 1,40,000 kilometers, square kilometers, and is a home for number of plants, animals, birds, amphibians, and reptilian species. Right. So Western Ghats is also one of the most biodiversity region. Lots and lots of animal species, plant species are there here. So Western Ghat is considered as one of the, you can see this is the ranking. Western Ghat is considered as one of the top 10 global biodiversity hotspots. This is another biggest concern for especially Western Ghats. You can see world's top 10, it's not rank or anything, it is the worst rank. It is there in one of the top 10 global world biodiversity hotspots. In the world global biodiversity hotspots, Western Ghats is in the top 10 position, which is a huge threat, because you can see Western Ghats has over 450 species of birds, 140 species of mammals, and 260 species of reptiles. This is a huge number. This many varieties of birds and mammals and reptiles are all under threat. And who is the reason for this condition? Human activity. Understanding? So these many species are under threat in Western Ghats only because of human activity. So this is the condition with reference to Himalayas, the Eastern Himalayas and Western Ghats. So Western Ghats a little more if you want to know, because we are from southern part of India. We need to know a little more. So the Western Ghats also has a number of freshwater fishes, number of invertebrates, most of which are endemic to the region, right? So we have a lot of fishes. Fish variety that you can see in southern part of India is not obviously seen in the northern part of India. Even fish consumption is not that great with reference to northern part of India, excepting for Bengal or West Bengal or few places like that. But a huge consumption and huge variety of fish also you can find only in southern part of India. So similarly, because it's only because of it being a Western Ghat. Uh, Similarly, a number of amphibians. Amphibian, simple example of amphibian that all of you know is a frog, right? So, but so many other species are there. Number of amphibians that are endemic to the Western Ghats and area has become a hotspot to discover new species of frogs in the last decade, right? So, this is also great with reference to Western Ghat, but unfortunately, because it is being identified as a hotspot, there is a lot of varieties of frogs that are coming, right? The frogs that your father or grandfather might have seen in their childhood and in their generation are no more there now, right? You are not able to see normal frogs. You can see frogs which are poisonous, right? Colored frogs have come. These are all not good indicators, right? Few of these new species that are being generated is a typical indicator of threat to the biodiversity. So the northern part of the Western Ghat range, which falls in Maharashtra, about one third of the plant, almost half the reptiles, and more than three-fourths of the amphibians known in India are found in this narrow strip of rainforest just off the west coast. This is the portion that we are referring to, right? This tip you can see, this is a tip that falls in Maharashtra, and they say this is such a biologically rich region. You can see the biological richness there. You can see lots and lots of plants, reptiles, amphibians, right, are all there in that narrow strip of the rainforest just off the west coast. So that is the beauty of the Himalayas and the Western Ghats. But what has happened to them? There is a lot of threat to the biodiversity. And what are the biggest threats of biodiversity? These are the different threats of the biodiversity, which is called as six biggest threats of biodiversity. So what are those six threats? Let us try to understand. You can see this, the first threat, of course, is climate change. There is a lot of change that is happening in the climate, right? There is a lot of change that is happening in the climate, and the change that is happening in the climate itself is one of the threats of the biodiversity. What does it mean? You can say earlier generation, even when you were children also, you would be knowing that from January to something like March, we are having winter. From April to say June or starting of July, we have to have summer, right? From August to something like September or October, we should have spring. Then we should have winter, right? It was a kind of fixed, and the table was going accordingly, right? So the cycle of the climate was very, very regular until some 20-25 years before. 20 years before, at least. Yes, it was regular. Rains were regular. Everything was going on properly. But of the late, if you see for the past 10 years specifically, if you can recollect, there is a lot of mixture that is happening in the climate. I am telling about our own country. I am telling about India. right? Some more clearly, if you want to know, come to Bangalore only. Take the example of Bangalore, right? Bangalore is one of the worst affected state, cities of India because of human activity and pollution and all, right? You can see Bangalore is much more weird. Morning you are going to see winter, afternoon you are going to see summer, evening rainy season, then night winter again. In between spring season comes in. In a day you can see all the climates. Rains have got disturbed. Groundwater content has decreased tremendously. Population has increased. Pollution has increased. What else India needs to suffer with? What else India needs to suffer with? So, uh, on top of this, there are problems that is happening. Means it is a bad luck. COVID is a big bad luck. If not for any other country, at least for our country, for India, it is a huge bad luck because we are going to see. I'm going to show that, right? So the first biggest threat for the biodiversity is climate change. Then you can see this is where global warming comes into picture. I'm going to explain that technically in the next modules. Second threat for biodiversity is habitat loss and degradation. Habitat loss and degradation. What is habitat loss? Simple example I'll give you. I think I told you in the first class. Um, Bangalore had. I'm telling about a story of Bangalore. Say 60 to 70 years before, or might be even 100 years before. Bangalore had 214 lakes were there in Bangalore alone. I'm telling about a story 100 years before. 214 lakes, the number of lakes that were there 100 years before. And 100 is not a big number in if you compare millions of years, right? 100 years before, which means our grandfather time, right? Or even our parents' time when they were young. So the number of lakes were 140, right? Right now, if you see the number of active lakes that are there in Bangalore is only 11. It's only 11. What has happened to so many lakes that were there earlier? And no wonder Garden City has become Garbage City. What has happened there? Habitat has lost. Pond is a habitat. That habitat will have its own animals, its own, its own nature, no? That is lost. One of the biggest, first pond that was encroached. What happened to the remaining ponds? Very simple. The means lakes. Very simple. They are all being encroached. That's it. The 11 lakes that you can see is all these Alsur Lake or Bellandur Lake and all. These are the 11 lakes that are remaining right now in Bangalore. So many lakes are being encroached. And you know what? The first lake, the first biggest lake that had to be encroached is your current Majestic bus stand, right? Majestic bus stand was a huge lake, and that is the first lake to be encroached in Bangalore. So subsequently, many lakes have gone, and on top of many of the lakes, you are seeing many layouts have come, and many buildings have come, and many constructions have already happened. No one knows where the lakes are. Only 11 lakes are there right now in Bangalore. I'm just giving an example of Bangalore. Imagine throughout the world, what is happening? Habitat is getting lost and the degradation of the habitat is happening. Then of course pollution. This is the most dangerous threat of the biodiversity. Then you can see this. This is where the current problem of corona can be fitting in. Invasive species. Invasive species. Here also potential threats. You can see epidemics. and infectious diseases of wildlife such as Ebola virus, infectious bursal disease or flu, wildlife and flu that affects the wildlife and biodiversity. Here you can perfectly fit COVID. Here also it is a new species that has invaded and it is a threat, potential threat. So what are invasive species? New varieties of species are coming. I just gave an example of that frog, right? You don't see that brown colored frogs anymore. You are seeing all the frogs have become changed colors. I'm sure in your school days you would have studied about the change in the color of mammoth. Mammoths are kind of worms, right? It's like looks like a butterfly. Their colors are changing, and more the color that it changes, more it is an indicator of more amount of pollution that is happening in the in the environment, right? So the new species are coming into the picture, right? And they are causing special kinds of threats to the habitat, and they are all foreign. They are all foreign. The foreign means not from foreign country. New species that is being generated, and they are not natural. Something that is not natural is termed as foreign in this context, and this can be one of the biggest threats of biodiversity. Next, of course, over exploitation, overusage, and overusage is another biggest threat with reference to our country in India. These are all 6 points with reference to our country India, more specifically for India, right? Over exploitation, over usage of water, over usage of current, over usage of animal feed, over usage of animals for our food, right? Over usage of animal products like milk and all, right? Overusage is a huge problem that is there with reference to India, right? The last one, but not the least one, is potential threat in the form of infections, which includes the current corona condition, right? And this slide is not prepared now, friends, looking at corona. This slide was there long back. People, scientists have already expected, and you know what? Don't get scared, but this is a fact. We are not out of danger yet. There can be many such infections that we might have to face in the generations to come. This is a fact. This is a proven fact. Unless and until we act now and we do something for this, we are not out of dangers like epidemics and pandemics. It is bound to come back in different forms, and there are going to be a lot of problems that we are going to face. And you know what? For all these 6 reasons, for all these 6 threats, there is one reason which I am going to show. That one reason is this one. The one reason for all these threats that we are facing right now is population explosion. Got it, friends? So this is our inherent problem. Population explosion is our inherent problem, right? So what is the problem that we are having with reference to India? How the population explosion in India is going to further affect us, and how you are going to play a very important role as an engineer to solve or give solutions for these threats of biodiversity, we are going to see in the next class. So I can't finish the entire module in this. Already 1 hour is over. So I'm going to stop here. Next hour is going to be, next means fifth lecture is going to be the last lecture, wherein I'm going to conclude module number 1. I hope you have understood all these concepts until here. So we have discussed about biodiversity and the biggest threats of the biodiversity. 6 different threats we have seen. Next class we are going to see more about population, and we are going to end this module by understanding how you are going to conserve the biodiversity. Okay, thank you for now.